Hi. Um, Today I want to share my reflections about female gig workers, especially in their movement against or resisting the unfair system on ride hailings or online taxi apps. Because, well, these reflections are actually from my recent discussions with some of female riders organization here in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. I think to give a bit of more context, so in Indonesia, I think it could represent the characteristic of global South countries where the informal economy become dominant practice, including in urban mobilities. So here we can see there are lots of informal transport services, and usually they also become the backbone of transportation because the roads in Indonesia are very much congested, and usually we have to rely on small road which only can be accessed by motorcycles or motorbikes, and that's why we have this motorbike taxi as a form of informal transport service. And since 2015, there are more motorbike taxi service that is feasible in the urban area because of the ride-hailing apps. Here we have many ride-hailing apps like we used to have Uber, but it was lost the battle with other local and regional players like Gojek and Grabs, and now we have other players as well, like Maxim's, Shopee, and yes, other local players like Jogja players, for example, or like city players. So in this kind of context on urban mobility, there are also growing numbers of female riders as a motorbike taxis, which usually these motorbike taxis is a very man-dominated world. It's a very man-dominated practices before, but now with this digital app, it gives another opportunity for female to become motorbike taxi riders. So of course, like any other countries with these ride-hailing apps or gig workers, there are issues of unfairness on the systems and also discriminations, and it also happens with the female riders. Well, according to the discussions I had with this female riders organization, usually some sort of discrimination is on when they accept orders or customers, when they accept male customers. So they have a high possibility to be cancelled by this customer, because usually male customers didn't want to have female riders. We have this sort of patriarchal context here, because men's perceive themselves as higher than women, and then meaning that men usually, it's not generalization, but it's just an example, men would want to be led by women, especially including men didn't want to be driven, didn't want to be in a vehicle that drove by a woman. So that's a bit of a context. So what happened is the system itself, the ride-hailing apps, did not sensitive enough to recognize this sort of bias, a patriarchal bias, and that's bring the effect or the consequence to the female riders. So they are usually have lower performance, lower ratings in terms of their working performance, because their account accepts much more cancellations from the customer because simply they are women. That's one of a discrimination. Other yeah, other discrimination, of course, these female workers are very much prone to or vulnerable to sexual assault that happens, because they, sometimes they can be catcalled by the customers or even other kind of assault. So that's a bit of a context of female gig workers that I had the discussions about. And I think I want to share 2 points here on 2 insights, I think, of interesting insights. First insight is on the metaphors. So one of the female writers told me that, well, in our app we only paid by kilometers, not by levels. So pay by kilometers, not by level. That's, for me, I found it interesting metaphor, because the system only recognize the distance or the working distance of these riders. So from point A to point B, the system only calculate the kilometers distance, and those kilometer distance will determine the amount of fee or the amount of payment they receive as the riders. However, sometimes, and this is not only specific to women, but there are some challenges faced by women because of this, is that in real practice in Indonesia there are many towers, apartment buildings, and usually, like here in Jogja, even though this is not the capital city, but we have several hotels and apartments, and usually when they deliver the orders, so these orders usually not only passenger services but also a delivery service, and usually this kind of challenge happen with those who are giving delivery service. So they need to deliver these orders to higher floor, like 3rd floor, 4th floor, and we also have a social housing, and usually in social housing there are no elevators, meaning that they have to use stairs to deliver the orders to the 4th floor or even the 5th floors. And what happened is that sometimes they mention that when the riders are pregnant, for example, or they're having this physical limitations to move, mobility limitation to move, it become a big challenge for them to deliver the orders to a higher level. They have to take stairs for that. Of course, it increased the risk of work, and also they say, well, we didn't get any bonus or extra payment because of that. So that's a very interesting situations I found. Not very interesting, but of course that's a very specific challenge that, again, I think it's not really recognized, sensitively recognized by the system. And the second point is that on the movement organization, so these female riders are actually have a union. I mean, like not a formal union, but like informal union. They have this informal union, usually organized through WhatsApp group. And what I found very interesting is on the motivation of the movement, especially on the means of solidarities. What do they want actually? Because, well, I've been working also with other driver organization that is led by men, and I found a different focus, because at least in my experience, it is harder as a researcher to find any reference or resource on a female gig workers association, that only like female-led gig workers association. And I think one of the reason why is based on this, interview I had. That's because they, as an organization, never prioritize on building reputation or building the name of their organization to the public. I mean, they don't really care whether people know them or not, because what is more priority for them is whether or not this union or these organizations can help their members in facing everyday challenge of becoming female riders. Like, for example, one member are being suspended, or their account are being suspended by the system because usually they are like they having a miscommunications with the customer and etc. And sometimes the system are really really automatically will suspend the driver's system. So in that sense, this organization will advocate the account to be reactivated, etc. So this kind of movement is a very informal activities, including communicating with the applicators or consolidating a movement for helping each others. And sometimes in this WhatsApp group, they also say that they are selling their food, for example, or their meals for additional income. So I think this brought to my reflections on how for female riders, female gig workers, solidarity is much more important than recognition or reputations. And the form of this solidarity is manifest through how these women able to support each other in facing everyday challenge or everyday discriminations that usually happen and faced by these female gig workers. So I think that's sort of two insight I share. First on the how usually these people are paid by kilometers, not by levels, and the second one how this driver organization are usually female driver organization are much more prioritizing their solidarity than their reputations. Well, thank you for listening. See you again sometimes.